Let's turn to the next piece of the program, and this is something that is new to this year's symposium. We've talked about doing this in prior years. We just were not able to get it pulled together, last year in particular when we were thinking about it, but we wanted to provide an opportunity in a plenary session to have some conversation with key policy leaders from here in Pennsylvania. And so we are very pleased to have a very distinguished moderator and then 4 key panelists. I'm just going to ask the panelists to come forward, please. And Bill, if you want to come on up too, and I'll do some brief introductions here. Now, again, longer biographies are in the printed materials that you have, so I'm just going to make some brief introductions. You've already met Senator Jay Costa, so he hasn't changed a whole lot since that introduction, so I'm not going to go through that again, but we're very pleased that Senator Costa, as one of the co-chairs of the Legislative Caucus and an individual with a long and distinguished career and commitment to arts education, is part of the panel. He's joined by the gentleman to whom he tipped his hat, and that is Philip Horn, longtime executive director of the Pennsylvania Council for the Arts here in Pennsylvania, recognized all over the country really for his leadership around the arts and arts education. And I think part of that recognition is the fact that within the last year or so, Philip, if I remember, you've been added to the National Board of Directors of the National PTA, again helping to link the arts and arts education to a broader set of education issues. Jenny Hershar is the Executive Director of Citizens for the Arts in Pennsylvania, and I want to thank Jenny for all of the help that she's given us. We at EPLC were the new kids on the block around a lot of this arts education stuff 3 years ago. Jenny became a part of a lot of the work that we did, I should say all of the work that we were doing over the last 3 years, beginning with the study group, the writing of the report. We prodded a little bit, I think, in that report, encouraging not so much the staff there, but the rest of us as citizens to take seriously this advocacy opportunity presented by this organization. And we've seen Jenny and her colleagues and her chair, Mitch Swain, really take the lead in prompting lawmakers, of whom there are now 80, to come together as part of the Legislative Caucus. And then Rita Perez, who is the Acting Deputy Secretary for the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education at the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Rita is a longtime staff person and leader in the Department of Education. We all know there have been a series of changes in the department over the last 6 or 8 months, and Rita now has some very key responsibilities pertaining to elementary and secondary education. Some of the stuff that is the subject matter of other sessions that we're having around teacher evaluation and standards and a variety of things that she, I think, will choose to report on. And then we're very pleased to have Bill Lair as the moderator. Bill Lair has had a distinguished business career. He continues to serve as the chairman of the board of Blue Cross of Central Pennsylvania, had been the CEO there for a number of years. I think we first met each other when you were with Hershey a number of years ago when I was still in the legislature. He's past chairman of Americans for the Arts, the executive director of Americans for the Arts. I had a breakfast here in Harrisburg just last week, applauded Bill for a whole career of service to Americans for the Arts, and even though he's not chair now, continues as a board member and continues in key leadership roles with Americans for the Arts. And then recently was appointed by the governor to the Pennsylvania Council for the Arts. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Lair. He's going to, I think, ask each of our panelists to make some brief remarks, and then we'll have some discussion with those in the audience. Bill? One, two. Can you hear it? There it is.
Okay, let me just turn it over to each of the panelists for whatever opening remarks that they might want to make, and let me just go to my left and start with you.
Thank you, Bill. It's my pleasure to be here today representing the department. And before I begin, I'd like to congratulate South Fayette, Senator Costa, and Alexis Stauffer for their recognition and for their advocacy prior to coming to the department, I was an educator in the Allentown City School District for 20 years, and I'm an elementary teacher by trade, so the importance of the arts is not lost on me, and especially how we can use it to integrate it in the classroom and help support student learning. So that, just to set the stage that this is an important topic for me personally, for sure. As you know, we've undergone many changes in the department, and we have launched many initiatives this year to support increased rigor and improved student achievement for all students in the Commonwealth. Those changes include moving forward with soon to implement the PA Common Core, along with rigorous assessments, our Educator Effectiveness Initiative, which I know that you've been learning about, student learning objectives, and then of course a whole new differentiated system of accountability and recognition related to what we call our school performance profile, which went live at the beginning of this month. All of those pieces put together in an integrated format help form the vision that the department has for education in Pennsylvania. Now, when we think about those things and we talk about those various initiatives, it doesn't seem obvious that the arts are part of that. But I would beg to differ. I would beg to say to you that the arts are very much a part of that, because without the arts, we don't have alternative creative outlets for our students to show their skills and talents, not only in that way, but to develop their creativity, to develop their communication skills, to develop collaborative skills, and ways to work together so that when they get into other academic areas, they can translate or transfer those skills into those areas and help to support their achievement in, let's say, reading and mathematics. As an elementary teacher, just a quick short story, and then I'll let Senator Costa speak. As a quick short story, as an elementary teacher, I taught fourth grade, and we had the privilege as fourth grade teachers to participate in what we call the Allentown Arts Walk every year. And we took our students to what we have a little triangle, an arts triangle in Allentown, and our Allentown Arts Museum is there, our Symphony Hall is there, and then we have a School of the Arts, the Bond School of the Arts. So it forms this nice little triangle, and every fourth grade student goes on a full day field trip to these three locations in an integrated fashion. There's an integrated program for the students. They learn about various deep content matter through the arts. They get to go to the art museum and examine pieces of art, maybe for their historical nature. Let's say surrounding Gettysburg this year would have been the perfect example. There would have been artwork surrounding Gettysburg to talk about what the art signifies in terms of learning about the history. They may have then gone to the symphony and heard music that would have been very typical of that time period, and then gone to the Bond School of the Arts and actually created some sort of artistic piece as it relates to what they had just learned. This was an amazing experience for the fourth graders, and they look forward to it every year as a highlight of the work that they did. The other significant note, just from my personal perspective and the impact of the arts, was one of our high schools in Allentown had one of the first arts academies at a high school. And included in that arts academy was a dance academy. And that was and continues to be one of the flagship programs for the Allentown School District. So knowing the impact that arts have on students and how that can help support students' motivation in other academic subjects is very important and not lost on all of us in the department, while it may seem that we don't talk about it as regularly as I'm sure you would like us to. But please know that we are very cognizant of it and work hard to incorporate those pieces in the work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. There's a lot that can be said about how we continue to move forward in terms of making certain that we are able to integrate the arts into our education environment, our curriculum. And a lot of it has to do with some of the advocacy that needs to take place, not only at the local level with the school board level, but also at the state level, making certain that as legislators, as General Assembly, we work hard to provide adequate resources to our school districts to be able to incorporate and expand arts in our community, in our classrooms. That is one of the charges that our caucus is undertaking as we go forward, and we are going to continue to be diligent along those lines, making certain that we continue to grow support along those lines. Ron mentioned that we are now up to 80-some members through working with Jenny and others.
83.
83, and I think, which means we've got about 170 to go, quite frankly, is my goal. And we've got a challenge that we have to continue to work on. But I think it's important that it's the advocacy at the community level, at the school board level, at the community elected officials level, but most importantly, I think along the lines of making certain we have adequate resources to be able to drive back to our school districts to continue these programs, to allow the arts to become a big part of what the educational experience of the students shares and experiences. So I'm pleased to continue to be able to do that. There are ways in which we're going to continue to try to do it outside of the caucus that we talked about. One of the things that we have going on right now to display and demonstrate the great quality of the art that is taking place in our students of our Commonwealth is that we now have, working with Jenny and Philip, we display art paintings and the like that have been selected from around the state that we are now displaying, so folks who come to Harrisburg get an opportunity to see firsthand what our students are doing and how they have motivated and moved our students in an appropriate direction. So I'm excited about where we are going, and I look forward to being a part of that. As I mentioned earlier, I want to thank all of you for being here today, to be advocates along those lines, to provide us the support that we need to grow this message, grow this mission. You got one?
I got it. Okay, thank you. I don't know how to turn it on, but hi. Hello? Okay. Oh, there I am. Congratulations to South Fayette. I was just there a couple of months ago. You guys have used our arts and education program for more than 10 years, and you sent a teacher and a few artists to the National PTA Convention and did a workshop on integrating the arts into the curriculum. So that was great. And I just wanted to come by and see this terrific place that continues to use art and artists year in and year out. So well done. Congratulations, Alexis. That's beautiful work. Thank you. And thank you, Jay, for your kind words. The Council on the Arts believes, not surprisingly, that the arts are important to the education of our fellow Pennsylvanians. We think every child, regardless of their age, location, circumstance, or ability, should be trained in each art form by a qualified, credentialed instructor in each discipline. We also want to see children making art under the guidance of qualified teachers. We want to see them encounter all art forms of great art in person and in venues where these works of arts can best be experienced, in museums, galleries, theaters, artist workshops, and so on. We would like to see the evaluation of art aesthetics taught as well. And we'd like to see the arts taught as a discipline in its own right, in its artistic, historic, ethnic, cultural, and social context. We want to see children interacting with professional artists so they can gain an understanding of what it means to be an artist and how the skills of the artist can best be used in the hands of a highly trained professional. Can we do all of these things? Certainly not on our own. There are lots of reasons to do them. I think I'd be not just preaching to the choir, I'd be preaching to a choir of choir directors if I were to enumerate them, but I'm happy to do that if you like. And we just had the Governor's Arts Awards last week in Harrisburg. The Governor and First Lady present these awards every year. We manage that production for them. One of the groups, and it stands out, it's the first time the Governor of Pennsylvania has given an award, an arts award, to a rock and roll group, a group called Live from York. We had the moment of them having their middle school music teacher come out on stage to present the award to them. And it was a very powerful and moving moment. And they credit this music teacher, who is still teaching in the school district of the city of York, still teaching middle school music. And they have become one of the most successful rock bands of all time, and have started investing hundreds of millions of dollars in communities in Pennsylvania for things like production facilities and so on. All started because of a music teacher in middle school. Yeah. So check the PCN schedule. I've watched it. I already recorded it, but check it out. It's really quite a moment. We also, wonder how children with different thinking styles and modes of perception and expression will learn how to be fully functioning, contributing, self-actualized adults and contributing citizens if they don't have the opportunity to participate in the arts. Our strategy is to decentralize. Put up the picture. That's us, decentralized. That's what I look like when I'm decentralized. And Senator Costa was with us when we started. It is an underlying strategy of the whole agency. And credit to the senator for embracing this concept. We had no trouble getting resources into Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, but it was not unusual for there to be 10 counties in Pennsylvania that received no support from this agency, and that's just not acceptable for an agency of state government. And through these partners, we have now been able to reach every county in Pennsylvania every year, and have had some real successes. $4 million federal Department of Education arts curriculum and dissemination grants have been made to partners in Pennsylvania, which is very significant. And because we have this partnership this summer, we had an opportunity to work with VSA Pennsylvania and the Kennedy Center, and very, very quickly put together workshops for teachers on teaching art to students on the autism disorder spectrum, something that just happened very, very quickly, thanks to all of these partners. Finally, I guess I have to say, after all of these years and working with a lot of artists, that money isn't really the issue. When artists would come to me and say, I went to the principal and he or she said, I don't have the money for your program, I said, well, that principle is just being nice, I guess, because the rest of that sentence goes, we don't have the money for your program because I don't think it delivers enough educational value to invest money in it. The kinds of things that we're talking about having in schools throughout Pennsylvania can, I believe, be done in every school in Pennsylvania and should be done in every school in Pennsylvania. And we're here to try to help make that happen. Thank you.
Well, he stole my thunder here.
I didn't know it was your thunder.
It was my thunder. This is what I talk about all the time. Citizens for the Arts is the statewide arts advocacy organization. So in addition to advocating for increased funding for arts education programs in public schools, we also advocate for the arts on the whole in the general community. We also work with cultural organizations to make sure that there is adequate support in both policy and funding-wise in the state to support the cultural infrastructure. The Arts Education Partnership that Philip talked about, many of the members are in here, and they help us do our advocacy work, as well as the partners in the PCA's Partners in the Arts program. That's another decentralization program that provides more funding across the state. One of our exciting things that happened to us this last year was the development of the Arts and Culture Caucus. And I'll tell you, we sat around and we thought about, how this was going to happen. We were prompted. Ron was right. He was kind of poking me in the side saying, make this happen. And the first person we thought of was going to Senator Costa, because we knew he was such a champion of the arts. I can't tell you how quick he said yes. It made my head spin. And then he said, what do I need to do? And we said, well, we want this to be a bipartisan, bicameral caucus. And that's very important because in the other states in the nation that have caucuses, they're neither bicameral or bipartisan. And we really wanted Pennsylvania to set the standard as as to how people can work together, and using the arts as a way to work together and create teams and things like that. Senator Costa identified 3 other members in the General Assembly. Senator Pat Brown from the Allentown area, I keep promoting him, Representative Stan Saylor, who's from Red Lion in York County, and Representative Tim Briggs, who's from Montgomery County. And they're working closely with arts and culture advocates across the state to develop policy, to talk about issues of arts education, cultural tourism, and things like that. And we're really excited to work with the caucus. And as you said, we have 83 members, and that's in less than a year. It was a year ago that Senator Costa announced the caucus. And in less than a year, we've come up to 83 members. It's the largest caucus in both houses of the General Assembly. So we're really proud about that. And we hope to discuss arts education issues with that caucus to make them aware of what's going on in our schools and how they can help. So that's pretty much it for Citizens for the Arts.
Well, I think everybody agrees, from what I can tell here, that arts education is pretty important stuff. How are we doing in Pennsylvania? Who would think that? Going okay?
I would say that it's just going okay. I think I'm
Microphone.
mic back. Thank you. I think it's just going okay because I think there's so much more that we can do. And I know as we look at declining resources, both at the state and local level, I think we have to be more creative. And that's part of what we want to be able to do through the caucus is develop ideas about how we can become more creative and be able to do more with less and work to make certain that we don't lose, that we don't regress along those lines. And I think that's something that we have to do. But I think as a Commonwealth, my belief is there's more that we can do, and look forward to the challenge to be able to do more as we go forward.
Who else would like to take a shot at that?
Well, I moved out here from California. Yes, I did. I really did. And so I've stayed in touch. What?
And stay.
I have stayed. You bet. I'm not going back there. So I've stayed in touch with what's going on there, and that's, of course, the situation there is kind of boom and bust, mostly bust. There's certainly plenty of school districts throughout California that have virtually no art and music, let alone dance and theater. And certainly states, there are other states, I would say mostly in the West, where the delivery of these kinds of opportunities is really very uneven. Certainly there are big differences in the delivery of these kinds of services within Pennsylvania, and again, that's part of the reason why we run our program the way we do. But I also believe and have seen that here in Pennsylvania and in California and elsewhere that it's always possible to take significant steps forward if the will is there, if the belief is there that these programs have value and can really transform a child, a teacher, and a school. Jump in.
How do I think things are right now? I think that I agree with Senator Costa. They're just okay. And I think we do need to band together and start talking about what's important to us. That's what our public policy leaders need to know, whether it be on the school board level, whether it be on the state level, or whether it be on the federal level. So, it's up to you to make sure that you get what you want by letting our legislators, our congressmen, our school board members know what's important to you.
I'd like to concur with what my fellow panelists have said and encourage all of you as you interact with your school districts who are in the position of having to make some very, very difficult decisions in some trying financial times, and exploring ways to be creative in continuing to support art in schools, using things like artist in residence programs, applying for grants in 21st century after-school programs to help support arts and augment what is already happening in the schools, and to find other creative ways in which schools can continue to promote art in their regular school day, as well as forming some sort of an integrated approach to integrating the arts into the classroom so that students have the ability to see that, as I said earlier, the transferability of the work, of the academic work in the other content areas, as well as in art and music. Thank you.
So what are the arguments? What really resonates? Let me start with the senator. Your fellow legislators, what really resonates with them when you talk about funding creatives?
I think a couple things resonate very clearly. I think when you begin to talk about the economic impact, for example, when you talk about arts in general, it clearly starts, I think, and has the most impact is when you speak about the economic impact in a particular community and what it means, and particularly in, we talked about Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Harrisburg and Erie and Scranton, some of the major cities, but there are a number of communities that our members are not quite aware of the economic impact on the community relative to whether it be a small arts group, it's an arts concert or arts event over a weekend or something along those lines that we're able to drive resources out to. When you take those away, the economic impact, the loss of jobs, the loss of impact in the community, I think is very, very important. When we talk about arts and education, I think it goes directly to making certain that members are familiar with and aware of the wonderful benefits of having folks have exposure to the arts, or students having exposure to the arts. And when you look at sort of tangible things, I guess you would call them, for a member would be SAT scores, their self-esteem, the success that students have in a variety of other areas when they have some level of exposure to the arts, whatever that exposure might be. I think those are the type of things that move members. And I think it helps them move that funding idea up, percolates up a little bit higher when you're able to make those type of cases, because those are probably the top 2 or 3 things that come to mind.
A couple of months ago, working with the artist and the teacher together as a team, she had this major social breakthrough. Is that fair, Gail, to describe it that way? And she was able then to begin to interact with the other students in the class. And she said, I challenge you to identify this young lady. And I thought, I can do this. I have a son who's on that spectrum. I think I know the clues to this. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. So this is a young person who achieved a real really full social integration in that classroom. And what is that going to mean for her? What does that mean for her teacher and her aide going forward? What does it mean for that school and that school district in terms of the kind of support she's going to require? And we just had a report about a similar situation with, I think, a much more severely affected young man working in one of our partners' summer programs, autism spectrum, who had a similar kind of breakthrough. And this is really no surprise to me, because when we think of kids or people as being disabled, we really need to think of them as being differently able, and that the arts provide a way of communicating and of receiving information that is not much explored in a lot of schools where reading and writing and mathematics are what we focus on all the time. As a colleague of mine has said, if you really want young children to understand the difference between planetary revolution and rotation, don't have them read about it, don't have them draw a picture, have them dance it, and they will understand it in their bones and in their muscles. That's where I think the value is.
One of the things I found in my experience is the arts educators are one of the hardest working group of teachers in a school, and one of the things that they do really well is bring the school community together in those wonderful, memorable experiences that we have, be it at elementary or secondary level, the first grade holiday concert and the high school play. So the importance of having arts in education at all levels is not just in what I referred to earlier in terms of the academic sense of it, but also in a culture and community building sense. We go out and we cheer for our sports teams all the time, but we also, don't forget, we also cheer for our musicians and our artists at the art shows and our choir when we have those shows as well. So those opportunities are there to give students that sense of belonging to the school community, and to also bring parents in and give them a sense of belonging to the school community, so that they can participate in those activities as well.
I have a couple of particular questions for the panelists, and then I want to open it up to the audience so they're ready. Philip, Governor's School for the Arts, I understand there's been some talk about resurrecting that. Can you tell us what's going on?
Well, not a lot lately. We had a meeting a while ago. Dave Dietz, I think, is here from the department. We had a meeting a while ago to talk with the Deputy Secretary at the time, Carolyn Dumaresque, about how we could work together. And one of the things that she put on the table was that she said she really wanted to bring back the Summer School for the Arts and wanted to know if we could help. So we began to talk about it and look into it. And the more we learned about it, the more it seemed like we could not only help do it, but that we were in a very good position to actually run it. Because of our decentralized programs, because of our connections with teaching artists especially, and community-based arts education programs. So we've actually done some homework. We've made a trip to the one in California, which is the largest in the country, and spent some time studying that program, and have begun to have some conversations about how to put together $500,000 a year for 3 years to restart the program. And so we're in that phase of trying to figure out if we can find support to bring this program back. It's something we feel that we can do, that we have the right kinds of relationships to find these students and find the right teachers. But the thing we have to do right now is find the money.
Just talk a little bit about what is the school, what happens.
Where's Beth? Cornell. You raise your hand, Beth. You want to know anything about summer programs for the arts, talked about it. But my first introduction had been in California. One of the directors there had been a friend for a long, long time. And I think the kind of the motto of the summer school for the arts is give us your weird, your wonderful, your artist yearning to breathe free. It's a place in the summer to bring students together who are extraordinarily talented. It has nothing to do with grades or anything like that, and put them in an incredibly rich environment with master teachers, and also put them in the presence of kids from around the state working in the same discipline and working in other disciplines, and give them an absolute immersive experience unlike anything they could have probably anywhere else. But I know somebody who has a deeply personal connection with the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts, and she's right here.
I had that connection through my daughter who attended the next to last year the governor's school was in session. She said it was the best 5 years of her entire life. 5 years, yeah. 5 weeks of her entire life.
Probably best 5 years.
She would have liked to have been 5 years. She went on to major in theater at Point Park University and graduated 2 years ago with a degree. But during her 4 years of college in the conservatory program, she didn't experience anything like she experienced at the Governor's School for the Arts. So I'm a big champion of the Governor's School only because I saw the transformation that my daughter made during those 5 weeks. She went, as a really good actor, but kind of immature and, what juniors in high school are like. And emerged being somebody who was very polished and very confident in her ability, which landed her a spot in a conservatory program for acting. So, I can't tell you, I cannot sing their praises enough.
If I could, so it goes back to being creative in terms of how we work to continue programs like the Governor's School for the Arts. I can share with you that there 5 or 6 years ago, we probably had 6 or 7 different governor's schools, and they've all gone sort of by the wayside because of limited resources. And the avenue that Phil is pursuing is one way in which we can do that. I think that's a number of areas. I think I just read recently or heard recently from the Governor's School for the Sciences, I think it was, is now getting some money. So it's about partnership and partnering with other folks to provide the resources towards that end. But it starts because of the sort of groundswell recognition that it's an important program that we need to have here in the Commonwealth. It's just not going to happen because folks want to get together, but I think that's what I saw, experienced. That's what I experienced and watched as some of the other schools have sort of risen from where we were to be sustainable, not through state funding, but through other program dollars. And I think, but it came from within. It came from the industry, it came from the community. And I think as part of the advocacy that needs to be done along those lines, that's something I think we all need to begin to look at if we want to really get back to that place and provide Philip with the support that he needs to grow the programs and reach out to those entities and have the resources to be able to do that, whether they be large resources or small resources. I think we all go towards trying to reestablish that program in that manner.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the Pennsylvania Arts Education Network has an online form where they're collecting all this information from past alumni at the Governor's School, as well as teachers who taught at the Governor's School. I think that's on is that on your PAN network webpage? Right, so if you know of anybody who went to the Governor's School or taught at the Governor's School, direct them to that page so we can collect that data. That's going to be very important for Philip when it gets to the point where somebody's saying, okay, let's do this.
I have a question for the Senator. Senator, I've been struck for a long time about your passion for the subject. Where does this come from?
My passion for the arts? Well, let me tell you, I do not have I'm not very talented in it, except for maybe I used to be in sports. My passion comes from, as a young boy, my father used to take my brothers and I, and it was a guide trip to see something called the NIT tournament. For those older folks will remember that. That predates the NCAA. And we would go to New York for 4 days, and we would go see shows. We'd see like 6 basketball games and 2 or 3 shows, Broadway shows, and we ate well. But beyond that, that's really what it stems from, and it's wonderful, fond memories for me to spend time with my brothers and my father and my uncles and cousins, and just experience the theater of New York City. And it's been with me ever since. As I mentioned to Philip, I think in years past, the very first show I saw was Pippin. Ben Vereen and Joel Rubinstein, I think, was in it. And the very first record album I ever purchased was the record album of Pippin. And so that's where it stems from for me. And it continued with my daughter, who's continued to be very active for 15 years in ballet and dance and theater and all that kind of stuff. So that's where it stems from for me, and it's never left. But there's other parts of it that I think, particularly in the arts and education side, that sticks with you, that you see the value that those investments, those dollars and those programs, what they mean to other students, and that really is a driving force today for me as well.
And the question to you, Jenny, tell us about your organization a little bit. What funds you? Do you have members? How does it start?
We do have members. Like I said earlier, we're the statewide arts advocacy and service organization. We're funded by a few foundations, and we receive some funding through the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts, which is why I sit very close to Philip. We have been in existence since 1979, so we're pretty old. We celebrate our 35th anniversary next year. But I would say in the last 5 or 6 years, under the leadership of our new board chair, Mitch Swain from Pittsburgh, we've really made an effort to be very vocal advocates for arts and culture in the state. And we've begun to work as partners with organizations like EPLC in advancing arts and culture.
Let me turn this over then to Philip and ask him if the senator would find you some more money in the budget coming up. What would you do with it?
I'd spend it.
Assuming that.
I think that there are certainly there are things that we've been working. We got some federal funds a number of years ago. What was that called? Never mind. And we chose to start investing in some long-term residencies in a program called Teacher and Artist Partnerships. That was the site we visited in New York, in which the teacher and the artist spend a week training in the summer to get ready for this program, and then share the teaching such that when you go into that classroom, you can't tell, except probably by the way they dress, who's the artist and who's the teacher. And after each lesson, the other who wasn't teaching is observing, and they debrief after every lesson. It's a really intensive program. But I mean, I can't imagine an opportunity like that in any discipline, whether it's art, science, math, to have somebody else in your classroom working with you, helping you develop ideas, and then spending time reflecting every time on what worked, what didn't, and most importantly, how individual students reacted. The teachers don't often get much time to see their own classroom and watch them interact with others. That certainly has been an area of priority for us. We're starting to evaluate the history of that funding and what impact it's had. The idea being that if we can offer the opportunity for a teacher to acquire those kinds of artistic skills and be able to use them, then every child that teacher touches will be affected throughout that teacher's career. So that, I think, would be an important area in education for an investment. And, continuing to provide the kind of funding and support to our decentralized partnership that has really made it, made it possible for us to prosecute our mission of being present throughout Pennsylvania.
Same question to me, if you had a little bit more money, what would you do?
I'd spend it too. Boy, there's a lot of things are going through my head when that question was posed, and I think the first thing that I need to consider, as we talked about how we would best allocate that money, would be where are we going to get the most bang for our buck in terms of going down and getting down to the student level for that money. Would it be bringing back an arts advisor? Would it be providing additional support to school districts somehow? Would it be to help support the governor's school resurrection? So those are a number of pieces that were going through my head. I think first and foremost, we want to make sure that what we were doing was really getting down to the student level and impacting the student.
Okay, we've got a couple more minutes. Audience, questions, comments? There we go.
The arts to me are terribly important. One thing, turn it on or turn it on? Turn it on? Which one?
That one.
This one. I think it's terribly important that we actually address giving time to find out how arts have evolved in partnership with technology. I teach gifted education at Hershey High School, and what happens is if a student is very good in the arts, the first thing the parents will say, can you sort of guide them to, or somebody will say, can you get them to another field that they can actually make a living? I actually have an advocacy group. I teach them how to advocate. I have another group in law, or intellectual property law, and they do everything as an integrated thing. And Senator Costa, you said you saw Pippin. Like we evaluate Pippin. Pippin was written in Pennsylvania. A lot of people don't know that. It was written at Carnegie Mellon by the students, not taught by the teachers, but by the students who had something to say to the teachers. But one department was over there, one department was over there, and Pennsylvania was very clever in seeing these poor students trying to speak to its government. You would have been able to retain the rights for Pippin that instead of sending royalties to New York, they would be sending them to Pennsylvania. So my students at Hershey study royalty costs. If they want to sing a song, they have to write a song. I bring an attorney to teach them intellectual property law. And one thing I have to honest to God say to you, it is important, above the money, that you guys seriously consider where the arts have gone since your time. Because there's an old French proverb, be careful how you teach children in your lifetime, for they were not born in your lifetime. Their lifetimes will be evolving, inventing, innovating, integrating. And my students are taught to think for the future where something will go. We actually play a game in my class, we make me obsolete today. If they have a better tech, I will get my textbook and throw them out the window. So the thing about it is, we need time, before you make policy, understand what is happening. Now, I myself, I'm watching these kids, I will sit with their parents in the arts and say very carefully, you're gonna go into this. You're gonna acquire a big debt that you're gonna have to pay off. And if you're gonna become an artist, you're not gonna have a corporation in which you're gonna have a 401k, you're not gonna have retirement. You're gonna have to figure out how to make it. So when you address the arts with a student, you have to understand that Pennsylvania has to build an infrastructure in which to sustain that student, that they know it is a true career path, that they may continue on that path. So Pennsylvania at this point, went to New York, I learned all my arts now recently in New York. The new market is the high school market to sell musicals. I'm teaching my students how to produce them, how to write them from scratch, how to copyright them, that they have a product to sell to New York. So we have to seriously sit down and say, what is Pennsylvania doing to actually create a career, retain rights here, and if a student makes it in the arts, is Pennsylvania the home for them? Do they have to leave Pennsylvania in order to make it? So what I'm trying to say is a statement. You have formed a caucus. You guys are addressing the future. I beg of you to understand clearly where you're going, what the new market is, and where the arts are basically now the internet, the content of the internet. That is huge. This is not a multi-million-dollar industry, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. My question is, how you will address it will determine whether that industry remains in Pennsylvania or we will export the best of our minds to other states.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Okay, I wrote it down so I won't forget. So Bill Lair asked the panel, how are we doing in PA as far as arts education? And I wonder, do we even know if we're doing good, bad, or okay? Basically, do we know who's getting access and at what frequency and what arts are we talking about? You could get visual arts, but you might not have experience in theater. Okay, so, so do we have that information? And if we don't, do you see it as any one of your work to maybe create that sort of census, to find that information?
Would I want to take it on?
Yeah, I thought that that was something that EPLC was going to work on. You know, data collecting, census, what's going on in the schools. I think that in conjunction with EPLC as maybe taking a leadership role and working with groups like Citizens for the Arts in Pennsylvania and working with the arts education discipline organizations, we maybe can come up with something like that. Right now, we don't have it.
Jenny, if I could just respond to the suggestion that maybe EPLC is going to do that. One of the recommendations that we made in the 2012 report was that there was a need for a data collection system. And I think we said in the narrative that ideally it would be the Department of Education that would do it, because the department actually has the authority to require school districts to submit information. Nobody else really does. But in the absence of the department doing that, somebody needs to do it. And I think that's been the consensus position of the membership of this new Arts Education Network. And so there is a committee that is being formed to take a look at what opportunities might exist, what would be required to actually create that kind of system, to one, take a snapshot, but then collect data on an ongoing basis as well. I'll just restate what was in the report. Ideally, the department would do it because you have the authority to gather the information. But in the absence of the department doing it, there's still a need, and it may take a bunch of volunteer organizations with some philanthropic support to actually build that system.
Good. Bill, that's good. And Ron, thank you. I think, as I'm sitting here thinking, and that may be something that we may be able to encourage the department to do in the form of maybe a resolution of some sort or a legislative study, whether it be through budget and finance in conjunction with the Department of Ed. I'd like to explore that. But would want to sit down with folks about making certain that we have, we can agree on the data that we need to collect and how it would ultimately need to be interpreted. So we can follow up with that with you guys as well.
That's great. Next question.
Just a couple of things. One of your primary sources of data is simply how many art, music, and dance teachers are sitting in high schools. Artists and residents are great, but you have people that are certified educators that can't get hired. We've never made it mandatory for art in the curriculum in Pennsylvania schools, not with an art teacher. The other thing I really got up for is, I'm a graduate of the governor schools. We cannot expect companies to rise in pay. This is something we have to do as part of our education budget. And it's sad that you had to go to California. The governor's schools started in Pennsylvania in 1971. Arthur Gaddy died knowing what he started was shut down. New Jersey copied what Pennsylvania was doing. And I'm just wondering, is anyone else an alumni? Because most of us went on to be teachers, educators, we work in the arts, in writing, photography, drawing, painting, sculpture, dance. We're all over Pennsylvania. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's there. It just has to be funded. We've really forgotten our excellent children. We're always looking to the lower rung, but you know, for these kids, 230 to 250 kids a year got something that was free. Got something they couldn't get at home, and got something that changed their lives. That has to be kind of a core mission for us. How are we going to educate our students? But that also starts with an art teacher, a music teacher, a dance teacher in every school. But we don't even mandate that they should have a nurse. So we have to look at what, the council's great, but we have to put things in place. We have to get it to them. You know, we're the things, they call us the humanities because we bring humanity to our education of our children. Thank you. I was just wondering, with No Child Left Behind and the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the arts were deemed core. Federal law says they're a core subject, yet we're celebrating, and no offense to anybody, we're celebrating 5-week summer programs, and we're celebrating after-school programs, and I appreciate all of that, but would we teach math or language that way? And if we are a core subject, how can we get a general understanding that we're a core subject besides preaching to the choir? How can we reach that point? It's been a long time since we've been identified as a core subject, but it doesn't seem like we are core when we're in our classroom every day. Any thoughts?
Anybody want to take that one?
Well, I echo what I said before. It's not a financial problem, it's a political problem. It's a question of will, and there are elected officials all over the state who are making decisions on budgets, and budgets are a statement of priorities. And so, that, to me, it's a very simple. And Pennsylvania, is very much a local control state when it comes to education. And I think people would love the idea of flipping a switch in the Capitol and watching the lights go on all over Pennsylvania. But that's not how my perception, that's not how it gets done in Pennsylvania. It gets done one classroom at a time, one school at a time, one district at a time.
And as everyone said, this is a local issue, so the way to do that is to organize grassroots, to go to the school boards and tell them what your priorities are. So, that's the best way to do it. They want to hear from their constituents. They don't want to hear from somebody in Harrisburg.
Okay, we're getting close on time here, so you're on.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a big elephant in the room. The elephant is the $1 billion that was cut from state education. You talk about how this affects the arts. I will tell you 20,000 jobs were lost through attrition, teachers who weren't replaced, through cutbacks across this Commonwealth. 20,000 jobs 3 years ago. A majority of those jobs were arts positions. Art, music, dance and theater, my goodness, how many of us have that? Very few. Even though Chapter 4 regulation says we're supposed to in K-12, doesn't exist. Some places do, and thank goodness they do. But a majority of them were arts teachers who were cut. Also world languages, librarians, and people in those areas, but mostly art and music. I hear these kind of stories throughout the state. You heard it last year. Upper Darby was here and talked about it. I congratulate South Fayette for doing what they're doing. Guess what? They need to take this show on the road and take it to every school board, 500 school districts, 500 associations, 500 plus PTAs, and we need, I know you say it has to be on a local level, but Jenny, you know what I hear? We do support the arts. We do, but finances say we have to cut somewhere. And because of the exceptions rules, they can get rid of the arts and the music across the state. And that, unfortunately, is so sad. So let's not just think that elephant has gone away. We need to try to refund those funds back into the arts, not just for the governor's school, but for the state of Pennsylvania, because every one of them affect our students within those 500 school districts. Thank you.
I have a two-part question, and I'm wondering, as a follow-up to what you were just saying, and in so many conversations like we heard in some of the earlier panels, it comes down to those of us who work in the arts or arts education talking to more than just ourselves. So, Jay, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind explaining how simple it is for people to make an appointment with someone like you, whether it be a understand as well as anyone how important it is that the corporate sector support the arts. And I wonder what are the arguments that resonate with people that work in your industry, in the business industry, so that we can enlist their help as well.
I think, in answering my aspect of this thing, I think if you find people inside those business organizations and make your case to them, they will find a way inside those organizations to go through their processes to have the kind of impact that you're looking for. I know in my company, which happens Blue Cross at this point, we are a great supporter of the arts, but we look to our people. What are they supporting? What do they want? And dividing up the money, we pay attention to what we're hearing from our employees. But I'll go to Senator Costa.
Thank you, Bill. Mitch, thank you. It's very easy to reach out to members. Simply pick up the phone, contact them by email, pay a visit to their office. I think as Jenny mentioned earlier, bring folks who are impacted with you. I think that's the most important thing. What doesn't work, quite frankly, is a form email, a form letter, or a scripted telephone call. I think it's just the personalization of meeting with somebody and talking about the issue and the importance of the issue in whatever different way it might be. It may be an economic issue, it may be an arts program that's being closed in a local school district, and they point directly to the fact that funding has been cut. It's important for members to understand that, but it's a very easy process, and I think members would welcome that. The second thing I would do is, to the extent that you're part of an arts organization, not necessarily arts and education, or maybe it could be related to that, invite members to participate or come to a school play, whether it be elementary school or high school, to allow them to experience firsthand the high quality work that the students are performing. It's a variety of all those different things that I think make it very effective.
And I would suggest that when you have those visits, you go prepared. You've got about 10 or 15 minutes for those visits, so you've got to make sure that you get the most bang for your buck. So be prepared with those statistics that you have. Make sure that your stories are concise, and make sure that they're local. You know, Philip told you the story about going to a school in York County. Well, Representative Saylor will tell you that same story, but tell you that because of his visit to that school, he did a 180-degree turn about how he felt about the arts. So he became a very big supporter of the arts when before he was not so big of a supporter. So taking him to that school really made an impact.
So one of the things that I notice is that legislators who do not have constituent service as their top priority are soon referred to as the former senator. Or the former, and one of my introductions to Senator Costa was being called on the carpet about a grant we did not give to the San something festival. And yeah.
The San Rocco Festival.
San Rocco Festival,
Yeah.
exactly. So, you know what I did? I called the San Rocco Festival and said, how can we help you? And we did.
Yeah.
We're just about out of time, but we got.
No, it's okay,
last
take
two.
these two folks.
Okay, we'll take these last two.
I have to agree with Mr. Horn about a lot of our problems here are all political. Where I think this quibble a bit is that it's also at the state level. Currently, the accountability squeeze on arts education in Pennsylvania has to go uphill against the school performance profiles. Okay, so if you're a principal, first and foremost, you want your number to be 80 or above. Teacher effectiveness initiatives, which again are part of, if you're a principal in today's world, your number one goal to keep your job and keep your salary up is to make sure your school is high. So therefore, what you're going to do is going to double the time that English and math is taught and science is taught in the schools. Increased time for resources to the core. Almost all arts teachers anymore are being asked to teach, and phys ed teachers and science teachers are being asked to teach English and math in every one of their classes. There's an accountability squeeze out there in arts education in Pennsylvania, and I don't know if that's an unintended consequence or not, but it's having a significant impact on the quality and the availability of the arts. And I say that in all honesty with one. I work in one of the best school districts in Pennsylvania for arts education, and I'm blessed to be where I'm at. But I just know that many of my colleagues are facing all of those initiatives, and it's a hard world to be in.
let me clarify. I just want to clarify a little bit that you know, if there's a yes at the federal level and a yes at the state level, but a no at the local level, then it's going to happen. And even if that no at the local level takes the form of a yes, if the work isn't done at the local level as in your school district, even if they say yes, you know, what they're going to produce is not going to be of value. I remember when in California when they made the high school graduation requirement to enter the California State University and college system, there were some very strange things that passed as the arts to meet that requirement. So again, the support at the federal and the state level is absolutely essential, but we can't forget the advocacy at the classroom, at the school, and at the district level. That's all I was trying to say.
Yes, ma'am, bring it home.
Hi, I'm with the School District of Philadelphia, and I have recently taken over as Director of Art and Theater for the school district. I've been here all day, and I've been getting I don't want to come off as being angry, but you have no idea how the arts are affected in a huge city like that. There's over 200 visual arts teachers. There's I don't even know how many theater teachers are because, quite frankly, you know what the situation is with certification, even though I went out the year that was told that communications is it. I went out and took the exam and I passed it with flying colors, yet we still don't have a certification for that. I spend my days digging through basements of closed schools, finding materials to give to my teachers because they have absolutely nothing. I mean no paper, no pencils, no crayons, nothing. And I physically am doing this. I'm dumpster diving and digging through stuff and asking people for freebies. And the principals are saying, gee, I'd really like to help you guys out. We love having art teachers. Do the best you can with what you have. I spent thousands of dollars of my own money up to last year when I was in a classroom. And that is not an exaggeration. Thousands. Thank God my kids are out of college, that I can afford to throw some money out there. But I have teachers coming in that are brand new, right out of college with debts, young families. They can't afford to bankroll their own classrooms. What do I tell them? How can I help them? I've heard solutions today all day. Oh, we have 26 schools in our district. Well, I have over 200 art teachers in schools in one district. It's so much more grave a situation than, I mean, if I had 26, it would be a piece of cake, quite frankly. I am really frustrated, upset, and I don't know what to do next because we need to be there. The kids need it. They love it. It's so important to them. What can we do? I need your help, desperately.
I think he's optimistic.
I think it goes back to advocacy. I think that it all goes back to advocacy, particularly at the local level, and it needs to resonate to the top and rise to the top. And it's probably the only thing I can share with you. We got to continue to let folks know that education funding is extremely important, and it's about the dollars that we drive back to our local school district and the desired local school district to want to take those dollars and invest them into those programs you just talked about, and providing support along those lines. But it's all about advocacy and making certain that folks understand and hear about what is important in the local community, in my mind.
You bring that passion to the legislators that are here. Okay, how about a round of applause for this?
To our moderator and also to each of the panelists, thanks very much for a stimulating discussion. Let me remind you of the policy ask of the network, and then we'll take a shorter break and then get into the afternoon sessions. But there are 6 things that the policy network has agreed to ask for, if you will, of policymakers. One is directed at school boards, and that is, again, remembering that graduation requirements are decided at the school district level. The ask is that every school board establish as a high school graduation requirement a credit in the arts. The other 5 are directed at state policymakers, and let me just share them with you in summary. 1, restore the position in the Pennsylvania Department of Education that has been vacant for several years as fine arts advisor. Secondly, clearly indicate to school districts that they may use Title I and Title II dollars to support arts programs that are consistent with the other purposes of Title I and Title II. 3, to restore the governor's school for the arts using, at least in part, state funds. 4th, to establish for teachers of dance and teachers of theater an endorsement. That's short of certification, but it's a step towards certification. And the 5th one, really reflecting what Debbie was saying and others have said during the course of the day. Folks will debate source of money, et cetera, but the reality is that school districts started school on September 1 of 2013 with about $700 million less from the state than they had 3 years earlier. $700 million. That's a slight improvement over the $860 million reduction in resources of 2 years ago. But as I've said to a number of folks, my young grandchild, who is starting kindergarten, will be well through high school if the dollars are restored at that same pace for the foreseeable future. And so the last ask of the network is that state officials take steps and make a commitment in a strategic, planned way to completely restore the funds that have been cut from school districts, and to do that over a 3-year period. And the final thing I'd note for the person from the Philadelphia School District who kind of raised this subject, and again, it's a theme that runs through all of this, and I think the senator suggested it in his own remarks. In terms of members of the legislature and other high-ranking officials in state government, nobody appoints them. They're elected. And so in terms of what one can do, sometimes we forget that important part of the process. Nobody appoints these folks. Typically, they're pretty clear about what they stand for, even while they're running for election. So that's an avenue. I'll call it part of the advocacy activity. But we ought not to lose sight of the fact that, again, we get to select the members of our House and Senate and other high-ranking state officials. And we ought to exercise that right in a thoughtful way. So let's take a 10-minute break and get started with the next sessions right around 22 minutes till. And we'll continue on with the rest of the program this afternoon. Thanks very much to our panel.